I made it on, Fleming. Frankie Lee.
Hi, Frankie Lee. It's good to see you. You already had Zoom installed?
Yes, I did it the other day. Somehow, even in my unknowing, I managed.
Good. But you're looking at the ceiling, I think.
Yeah, that's because I'm moving around. Will get me set up. Yep, you were upside down.
Good. Well, good to see you here. So we usually start with a quick sort of check-in to hear how everybody's doing, just sort of briefly, where we're from and stuff like that, while people are arriving. Okay, and it's a good idea to mute your microphone when you're not talking. Otherwise, we usually have a bunch of extra sounds.
And how does one do that? Are the controls visible?
So yeah, it's at the lower left. There should be a mute button.
Showing your name at the lower left. Let's see.
Are you you're on a Mac?
I'm on an iPhone.
An iPhone. Okay, there should still be a mute thing somewhere. Otherwise, I can mute you, but there should be.
Oh, yes, it's another screen. Thank you.
Right. Okay, so just right now it doesn't matter so much, but during the meeting, it's like that. Just okay. So let's just do a quick check-in. Like, I'll start. I'm doing fine. I'm a little confused because I have two screens. I have to think a lot to figure out which one I'm on, but hopefully it works. Otherwise, it's a nice day. I just came back from 5 days in Prague dancing Brazilian souk, which was very nice, and I'm still trying to get back to normal life. A lot of sort of body isolations and head rolls and stuff. Harry knows how to do it. You got it. Okay, so that's me. How are the rest of you guys doing?
I was sick last week, and I fasted for 3 days. So I was resurrected on Saturday, and I feel great now. But I'm so much behind on all information that I'm absorbing all kind of stuff, but I'm experiencing something that computer nerds like to refer to as stack overflow. So I have too much to process. But other than that, I feel fine. I'm happy to see and hear you all. Thank you.
May I ask who's talking? I didn't see a picture of you either.
It's you should put it in gallery view if you see a button.
Yes, but I will be confusing as I have logged in twice. One time for the good sound, and on the Wi-Fi you can see my picture. I'm the moving Harry here. This one is the one who was talking on.
Now I see you. I see, but it was a little icon when you were speaking because of the sound.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
And I don't know about gallery, Fleming. I'm sorry.
So it should be to the left on the screen, whether there's speaker mode or gallery mode. And if you're gallery mode, you see several people at the same time, which is nicer. So you have an idea. Otherwise, you need to slide back and forth. But usually it will try to show you who's speaking.
I'm sorry.
Upper right.
Upper right.
Upper right.
Upper right says leave if I go there.
Yeah.
Upper left
it's reverse.
It's to the upper left. I forgot how it looks on a phone, but on my iPad.
You might need to swipe your screen, actually, Frankie.
Oh, thank you.
So if you swipe your screen across, you might be able to see another option.
Okay. All right, we'll move on. Who else? Simon is giggling in the background. How are you doing?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, very good.
Hi, Heidi. I'll jump in. I'm here in what's known as Vancouver. It's raining, which is exciting because we haven't had a lot of rain. Well, we have now, but in previous years, it's been a bit, it's been dry. So it's very spring-like, and I'm grateful to be here with you all.
And this is Sam. I'm actually not far from Tammy. I'm about an hour and a half south of Tammy, north of Seattle. And it's drizzling here, which is a difference than yesterday, which was a very bright, magnificent red daybreak. And I'm freshly showered, and I'm looking forward to talking to everyone, and I feel clean and relaxed.
And 3 hours to the right is Simon in Ontario, Canada. It's 11 o'clock here. And I'm very happy to be part of this very special conversation today.
This is Ron in Chicago. I'm in the middle, and it's raining here. And I was kind of sick yesterday, so I have all those things in common with everybody who's here and who was a little bit sick, and where it's raining. There could be some snow tonight, so that's Chicago.
Oh, this is Frankie Lee, and I just succeeded in taking myself off of mute. Yay. And I can see you all thanks to Tammy. So I'm feeling like the day is off to a good start. I'm in mountain time in the United States, 8,000 feet up in the mountains in Colorado. It's been snowing the last couple of days. And I got here 3 weeks ago from California. So I'm still adjusting to the altitude. And I have a 3-month window here before I travel on, and that's part of my story, which I'll leave till some other time. I'm happy to be here. And Fleming, I'm so excited to participate in this creation.
Glad you're here, Frankie Lee.
Yeah.
All right.
I used to live in Albuquerque, so I like that area, just to decide.
So if anybody else wants to check in, now is a good time.
Yes. Why is Fleming and Harry checked in twice at the bottom?
Well, we're logged in with several computers for various reasons. Like for me, one is recording it, but it has problems with my sound, so I'm on my iPad. So just ignore one of us.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, so we should. Yeah, Heidi.
I don't know if I came late, so I don't know if everybody has done or not. I could check in, yeah. It is afternoon, 5 o'clock in Italy. It is cloudy, but no rain again. And we will have at least where I live, a very difficult summer, because in this winter it didn't really rain. And so we will run out of water. I'm quite sure. I don't have water from public water. I have a spring, and when the spring is finished, I don't have water. So I still hope in some rain. You can send some over from California. Okay. I haven't prepared anything. I sort of wasn't, but I if you want, I can tell you something.
Okay. And, well, hi, Mila. We're just checking in. And otherwise, we can move on to the topic of today, which is telling your public story. It in part came out of, well, several suggestions from the last time from Sophie, who will be a little late, and from Tammy. And Tammy in particular suggested some of the ideas of Marshall Gantz, I think is his name, that it's a good idea to have a public story, a story of self, a story of us and a story of now. And maybe you want to give us a hint on that for people who haven't actually read about it. Do you want to do that, Tammy?
Sure. So the story of self is really about coming from you and what motivates you, what your challenges, the choices that you've made in your life, and those outcomes are, by really diving into your story and giving examples of when meaningful things happen to you and how it might have changed you. It's a way to be able to really land with people in where we come from and where we connect. It's a way to call people to action as well, to really land on what we can do together now. So we talked about maybe me going first to sample it, but that's what I would say, just to give people a little to work with.
Okay, so we probably should start with you. I think that's a good idea. And then before that, I would just ask everybody to make sure that you've arrived, that you feel present and well anchored and settled down, either in your chair, on the floor, and that you're breathing and noticing that you have a body and that you breathe, and yet you're here with all of us. And as usual, it's not about rushing to say your piece, but it's about sort of being present with yourself and who's here, and sort of sensing the rhythm of what needs to happen next. So anyway, so I suggest that Tammy, you give us an idea of what your public story is to start with.
Great. Hi, everyone. I would start my story by sharing that I have always been on a quest, on a spiritual journey from quite a young age. And, I was really looking, wondering, who am I? And very curious about that, and also about who are we. So when I was about 30, I'd spent a lot of my 20s and my teens and 20s really seeking and really curious about different spiritual traditions and the world. And in the year 2000, I had it was a really amazing time in the world. It really felt like there was this hope and that we were starting to progress. And I was that summer of 2000, I went to a spiritual channeler, and when I was there, the person gave me a intention to write on a card and carry around with me, which was this phrase, which was, I call for all of the gifts from all of my lifetimes to come rushing to me now. And whoa, like it was amazing. I had so many experiences of connection with people, of synchronicity, and of all of this information coming directly into my body. And it was overwhelming. I can definitely overwhelming, but also beautiful. Like I could really, I remember just these different experiences of coming across people that I'd never met before. I remember this one woman who was like, I'd never met her before. And she said, I know this sounds weird, but I had a dream that you were in last night and you were addressing a crowd, and it was this, with an inspiring talk or whatever. And other experiences of really amazing synchronicity where the world was so interpenetrative that it was overwhelming in a sense of people showing up right in that right moment and information passing between us that didn't seem like what science might say is possible. But I was having this direct experience with the universe, and it was amazing. Both amazing and overwhelming. And so that year there was an election going on in the States, and Bush was elected. And when Bush was elected, I feel like this capacity that I had kind of had to be able to directly understand information from the universe, suddenly my whole world was kind of shattered, because it felt like we hopped a timeline. There was a potentiality of us really progressing as humanity, and then there was this timeline hop. And I felt that so powerfully, that the world had changed and the potentiality that we had was no longer there. And so I was really challenged at that point, and, kind of dove into a bit of a deep depression, because I could feel that there was this new potentiality that was shitty. And so just a few months later, I met someone who also resonated with some of the dreams and visions that I had. And some of those pieces were just around how we could activate as human beings in bringing out what we all are and what we all have together to interweave a beautiful tapestry of human expression and activity together to progress, not just ourselves, but our consciousness together. So I met someone just a few months later. It was in April of 2001, and we started an organization called the People's Network, which was kind of bringing some of these ideas into the world, because what I realized is that we needed to work together to build things that could help us tell our story and could help us as communities to connect. I'm not perfect, and that experience taught me a lot, but it wasn't quote unquote successful. So what I learned is that I needed to learn. And so I spent the next decade sort of pulling back this awareness that I developed, because I couldn't handle it anymore. The world was so hard. I was just feeling buffeted by all of these terrible and challenging things. And so I've been on a healing journey ever since, to be able to believe in myself and in us and in our capacity to be able to work together to understand each other and to dream into the world that we need to co-create together. And so this is where I am, and this is where we are. And so I'm really grateful that we have this opportunity to be together in time and our different places, to be able to tell our stories so that we can understand each other better, so that we can see how we can help each other to progress into a world that we can co-imagine together. So that's, it sounded differently in my head, and the last time I said it, I shared it this morning with one of my lovely roommates, Yolanda. But just to complete, I feel like we are all in this amazing moment where we're required to progress as individuals and as humans. And I'm deeply grateful that every one of you who show up for this does. And I'm excited and curious as to others' stories.
That was really lovely, Tammy. I'll do my part because it's going to be a little different, and I'm worried about whether we have time to do one after the other here. That doesn't necessarily have to be the format. Part of it is that we sort of sense into this and we work on what's our story and what are the parts of it. But for me, I didn't have a story ready. So before this, I tried to write down a few pieces of looking at it that way, and mine became rather short, I think. So I looked at just some key pieces of self and us and now. So like for myself, one key piece is the first 20 or so years of my life, I was really rather asleep. I wasn't really aware that I existed, which might sound strange, but I hadn't really at all woken up to that I was here in the world and that I could do something. And then suddenly one day I did. The obvious thing dawned on me that I'm actually here, I'm present, and I can do things, and then things happen. And that was actually news to me. I didn't think otherwise I would have any effect on the world or it made any difference who I was or what I thought. So something shifted. So since then, since I remember very clearly not being there, it has become very precious to me. Anything that has to do with presence and maintaining a keen sense of this sort of constantly being aware of being present. I can do something, and it's not a given. It's not. It could be otherwise, but I wouldn't say I'm holding on to it, but I'm maintaining a keen sense of that. So that's me, and doing that in many different ways. For us, I've had many us's, but one of them was. One thing I'm fairly known for was starting the New Civilization Network in 1995, which was one example of trying to help a self-organizing network happen, meaning group of people and what do they want to do to make the world a better place in each their own way. How can that be helped and facilitated? And as an experiment that was very successful in some ways at first, but ultimately not successful, meaning that, well, it sort of fizzled out at the end. But it inspired a lot of people, and a lot of people felt that was something was really happening there. And I learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work. I mean, you can't just decree that this is now an emergent self-organizing network. Of course, you can't. You can help it. You can take show some kind of leadership, but you can't make it happen. I mean, it happens with the group itself. And it's rather paradoxical how can you help? How can you make that happen? I just said you can't, but how can you help it happen? How can you participate? So ever since then, I've been looking for doing that in different places, or looking for that point where a group sort of finds itself or tries to emerge, or something happens. There's a trend and a rhythm in a group, which is a little bit similar to my own sort of awakening, that a group or network discovers, hey, we're here, we're present, and we're actually free to do something together that makes a difference. But how do we do that? What is that? How to feel its way and finding what actually works without anybody just telling you or taking charge or anything like that? How does a group of people do that? So I've sensed it and experienced it at different scales. And this group here is also an example of that. We're here at our own free will. There are very limited rules, which are mostly meant for allowing things to emerge that sort of want to emerge. So that gets us to the now. And in all of these, they're like challenges and opportunities and what comes out of it. So like now, for example, here, one can express it in different ways. Some people, including me, have called it the question, well, how does this scale? I mean, if this works, like we here, we get along well, we have deep conversations, we're present to ourselves and the group in various ways. How can that happen on a bigger scale? How can that be? Doesn't mean we need to do it and that our model needs to rule the world or anything like that, but how can that happen all over? Or what's the way of dealing with that? Is it already happening? We just need to relax and do it, or do we need to do something? So sort of the challenge of how to go from a small group of people like us, this works with 10 people, but what if 100 people showed up? Then we might have a problem. It might fall apart, and we couldn't maintain that feel, or there would be different camps. I don't know. Or maybe something will work about it. So at least I see as a challenge point to sort of either connect up or evolve or scale or whatever we call it, of how can this happen in more places. And I know it already is, but how can we sort of help and participate in that? Because I very strongly believe that this is a key piece in the world working well, that we can just sort of relax and be together and sense a common movement together and help that happen. So there's a story of self, us, and now that applies to me. So I will stop here and invite anybody else to try to tell their story.
Hey, I'm willing to go next if that works. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Frankie Lee.
Well, first I want to affirm that New Civilization lives on in our relationship, Fleming, because that's how we met. Me coming to one of your events while I was taking on a similar experiment with an organization that I founded at the same exact time called the Art of Living Coalition in Los Angeles. So we've been traveling together for a while, and I'm really happy to be in this quiet place with all of you. It makes a lot of sense to me. I've just briefly, I can share that yesterday I passed the 6-year mark of living full-time on the road. And in this 6 years, I've been in 5 states in the United States: California, Oregon, Nevada, Illinois, when I went back for my college reunion, and now Colorado. I said Colorado. I'm having altitude effects. 8,000 feet I've never lived at. But I've lived in over 150 households. I've literally been in intentional communities, boats, ranches. I've slept on garage floors. I've had such a broad range of experiences. And what it's allowed me is to go very, very deep, similar to Tammy's experience, to understand perceptually what's going on with people that has us kind of flip back and forth between the knowing of connection as an implicit truth and the idea that we create from of separation. And it's been challenging for me to see as much as I see and to hold it as a positive, that I've been shown something that can actually open something up. And living in the United States at this time with everything that's so glaring up on the surface, it's allowed me to be able to see into the dynamic that's actually taking place beneath all of the surface appearance that has people othering and making wrong when they could be celebrating that we're all here together with all these amazing gifts. So I love the theme for today, and it holds very true for me in my life. I've called what I'm doing Circles Uniting, and it goes back to going to Canada in the summer of '85 and being able to have the privilege of stepping into a Native American way of the circle. And I've been creating gatherings and joining people with an affirmation of connection in the circle all this time. So I offer up to everybody that one way to explore this scaling to something larger is to, and I'm very happy to share, the sacred geometry of creation that actually outpictures that and allows for a steady state awareness. So however I can do that. I'm also very, very challenged right now to know where to land. I keep thinking I'm going to be landed with a core group of people in a physical space, and that has not happened in the 6 years, or really the last 13 I've been on the road, because I was in Europe and South Africa as well. So one step that I took actually came out of a conversation I had with Fleming, which was similar to what he just stated here about how do we come together. And I felt, well, if I could share my component, maybe that would be sort of the equivalent of putting a jigsaw puzzle piece on the board, and then people could see how to fit theirs together. And I feel like that was the impetus that took me on the road and has had me sharing my story as really a permission for people to step into the circle and step up and bring our components together. So I'm glad to be in an environment with a group of people that are similarly inclined, where I can take myself off duty at least part of the time. So thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm gonna take it off this thing.
I already muted you, frankly, don't worry.
Thanks. I'll get better as we go.
Now you pushed it again.
Could I talk for a few minutes? This is Harry. The voice comes without the camera, and I'm waving here. This is Harry from Antwerp. I was born in utter despair and been confused since. And all my life is a quest in trying to get clear about what this is, what is happening here, what is this? And it's called the world, and I'm named Harry, and this seems to be the universe. And since then I'm kind of puzzling to try get one clear picture of what this really is. And I work, I'm a visual thinker. I worked as an illustrator, graphic designer, and graphic facilitator the last years, and I still do that, kind of try to use pictures to evoke clarity, because if I understood for myself, if I cannot draw it, it's not clear enough. That's what I'm doing since. And I was sick last week, so I missed the thing about the mental models, because I'm all about mental maps and making representations of what we cannot really grasp, as the other speakers already kind of demonstrated. It's about something we cannot see, we cannot feel directly. It's all kind of sensed into, and yet it's fascinating what we're doing. And on my quest, which is a nice word, I've evolved from being very confused and very lonely to being more and more connected, thanks to you as well. And being more and more reassured that I do not have to do this on my own. I don't have to solve it on my own. And I can kind of settle down into the present and trust that it will happen and that I can be part of it and even enjoy it. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, I plan to make my presentation very short and sweet. I am the untamable unlearner. I've been unlearning for the last 15 years on a conscious level. I was unlearning before then subconsciously. So I came to, in 2000, I actually took it upon myself. Okay, I'm going to have a hobby. I'm going to search the web about unlearning. And the first thing that I checked was the naked tooth. And that took me to Ken Wilber's books. So I started reading his books, but I continued with my unlearning. And it's been a process which is continuing at this point. So I taught myself to understand sacred geometry, psychology, sociology, pornology, iridology, numerology, reflexology, tantricology, sexology, homeopathology, biology, criminology, physiology, metaphorology, and energy medicine. All of these are realities in my understanding of life. None of it is thrown in the garbage. Everything is inclusive. Ufology, I forgot. Although I take it all with a grain of salt, as we say, or with a skeptical look. So I inquire further as I study. But I feel in my heart that I constantly have to unlearn what I have been made to believe. Through no fault of any civilization or anything. It's just part of the evolution that we improve ourselves. And so I continue to clean up the debris that sits behind my back. It's hard to see it, so I continue to work on that. But I definitely feel that unlearning is, to me, the key path to be able to work on what is actually happening, who we are, our potential, and who we can be. So I very much resonate with Tammy's experiences. I've had many of those experiences, synchronicities, to the point that now it all synchronizes, and I pay attention to it, but I don't get overly excited at it because it just happens. It's normal to have synchronicity. Just keep your eyes, ears, and heart open. That's it.
I can give it a try. I grew up in Germany after the war in a family of 5 children, and with parents who were not really speaking about what reality is, and they sort of taught me not to believe what I see, and also not to connect with brothers. There was competition in the family, and this I took a long time in my life to be alone or with maximum one friend, and to connect very deep in this relationship. This is about the we. When we talk about the we I have to learn, and I'm learning it. But going back to the me, I always felt that I don't fit in what was offered to me. And I tried desperately to become normal. And I married and tried to be a good wife, and nothing worked. And I tried to be good in university, and but it was not as I should be, you know, because I should be very good and perfect and everything. And then I studied singing, and singing was sort of a liberation, because it's some like artists, you know, you go in another level. You can finally lose this cognitive constriction of being only in your head. And then I had always, looking backward, always some element in me which is kicking me in the ass and say, go ahead. So with 32, I ended up in Italy, where I'm still. And I, you know, I did professional choir and everything in between. And I could have gone to university as an assistant professor, but I knew that is not the street. So in Italy, I did all my development by men. I found another man, and with whom I went into the country, and I lived 5 years completely out of the world, only together with nature and with animals, and trying out all sort of things, which was really precious, and where I found a sort of natural mystic state, at least partially. And, you know, and I had to go on and kicked out, have to earn money by myself and find out what I can do and stuff like this. Anyway, with about 40, I finally decided that I need to do something and come out of this drivenness to be different. And I began with psychotherapy, and I began slowly to understand. And this was a time also when I met Ken Wilber and the books, and it was a real opening for me. And this was when I began to understand what the world is about, what I might be about, and where my direction is. The seeking, yes, but not exclusively spiritually, seeking to understand. And then later on, seeking to be part of the world in a positive way. And this then, coming to the we, is inspiring me to open up my restrictiveness to only one or very few chosen people, and to be together with more people and find out that it's not as, doesn't create anxiety, but instead it's quite rewarding. To the now, I have, let's say, I'm a little better in these days, but I had really months of sort of almost depression and desperation and not knowing what to do, not knowing how I can meet the situation. Although I continue to work what I want to do and everything, but sort of the feeling, what if it's everything too late? And what do I have to do to stop the world from disappearing, sort of? And this is definitely a little bit too much. And, you know, I'm very, let's say, emotional, also not expressive, but internally. So some days I feel I can do everything. Some days this desperation takes me, and I have the impression that I have always to walk on the, you know, on the grade. There's always the possibility to fall on both sides. So far, I succeed to keep me up, also by help of what we are doing. And I find it, how do you say, it has much value to me to do what we are doing. Also in the Wisdom Factory, the talk with people and get wisdom and knowledge and have people participate on that. Yeah, and go on. That's it.
Okay, I'll go. So if I don't go soon, my heart's gonna explode. But for some reason, I've got the jitters in my chest, which I've realized after a lifetime of thinking that was nervousness, that I could also call it excitement. And it was just a choice, that the sensations might be the same, but it's just a different word. So we'll go for excitement. I've been living in the woods for 13 years here in Norfolk, in the eastern part of England. And I came here first, having escaped from London after being in London for 10 years as an art student and an artist, sort of struggling to, well, trying to bring down capitalism single-handedly through art. That's what I was trying to do. But I didn't succeed, sadly, as we all know. So I came here to the woods to kind of lick my wounds and find out, you know, what I was going to do next, if anything. So I was a bit of a hermit for a while. And I suddenly, or not suddenly, I kind of, as I was spending time alone here in nature, I realized how profound my sort of need for that connection was, and how it had always been in me, even though I spent the first half of my life in cities. I have this incredible affinity and sort of just a very natural way of being when I'm in the kind of landscape. And sort of time passed anyway, and you know, as often happens to hermits, suddenly I found myself married with 2 children. But them having been born here and in the building where I live, and very much kind of, they're very kind of indigenous, I suppose, to this place, having, you know nothing else. And having children sort of brought up the question of what we're going to do with them in terms of education and all of that. And we very quickly realized, even when our first child, Gracie, was very young, that there wasn't really anything locally that was providing what we wanted for our kids. So we decided to set up a parent and child group, which we did, and we ran for about 6 years. And eventually we started off in a village hall in a building, but we realized very soon that we needed to do it outside because we had this amazing space here. So we started doing it here. And it became this incredible seed for community, because of course all those people with kids are going through the same thing, and getting them all together and getting them out here into the woods was such a beautiful thing to be a part of and to witness, and to see how good it was for the children just to be playing in the dirt and messing about. And you know, we very consciously were occupying the parents so that the kids could get a bit of space from them, and all the kind of overlooking and guiding, and you know, the parents do, meaning well but maybe not always achieving that end. So part of this process, once Gracie got to 7, we realized, okay, now we need to do something a bit more structured, like a school of some sort, or something more than just playing. Although part of what I've realized is that playing is the most sophisticated and beautiful form of learning ever created, you know, perhaps ever in the universe, I don't know, but it's a complete form of learning. And why we think we need schools and we have to kind of teach formally children things when they're just learning all the time, and they just need the right environment. But anyway, we thought it would be good to kind of have some sort of class for our eldest, so that kids of her age could get together and be in the woods, but learning or being together as a group. So we did some fundraising. We built a classroom in this clearing in the woods, where I've made a sort of outdoor venue for workshops and things. And we decided to kind of base it on the Steiner system, which is Waldorf in the States, based on the work of Rudolf Steiner. I mean, loosely based, because we're very open to all kinds of influences, but that seemed to be something that was closest to what felt like the sort of thing we wanted to do. So we got a teacher, we got people involved, we got kids to come, but it was always a struggle to find enough people to pay the teacher, because obviously the teacher needed to be paid a wage, find enough people and really get the funding, because a lot of the homeschool people that use this class, they're not earning money. Half of the family is with the kids, so you know their income is much less. So for the last couple of years, it's been a real struggle to just keep this thing going, to find enough people to make it work, to fund it, to have enough kids to attend. And it just felt like it was such hard work. You know, when they're there doing it, it's such a beautiful thing to see these kids just playing freely in the woods, and then they go in, they go out, and they're kind of experiencing the seasons. You know, they're doing all these different things. It was such a beautiful thing. It was so right to see it. And I kept wondering, well, why is it so difficult? Why is it not working? You know, when we've got such a good thing, something's just not right. And then our first teacher got pregnant, and then, you know, then we got a new teacher, and then this teacher, because they were both quite young, they're sort of at the beginning of their career, and they're constantly looking for something else to do. And we now lately found out that our next teacher is about to leave at the end of May. So I was in a kind of real crisis, just kind of bringing it up to recently, thinking, you know, it's so much work, and it's clearly not wanting to happen. So what do I do? You know, do I just completely abandon it, take Gracie out, and just, you know, we could just kind of do whatever we do with friends? And then I suddenly had this realization that actually all along what's been calling is for me to take it on and to do the class myself. And instead of, you know, because I've been telling myself, I'm not a teacher, I'm not interested in that, you know, I love kids, but I don't want to spend loads of time with them hanging out. You know, they also bore me sometimes with their conversation, you know. But I just realized that I was being called to do this thing. And instead of it being something that I didn't enjoy or didn't want to do, I could create something that would be really exciting for me, where I could be learning. So I suddenly realized that what I wanted to do was open a Jedi school in the woods, where we could learn all kinds of bushcraft. We could learn about the woods. Because I'm so intimate with the woods and the processes and the seasons. You know, we could learn how to make fire. We can dig clay out of the ground. We can make pots. We can fire them in the fire. We can make charcoal, you know, from willow, and draw with it. We can do all of these things. I can bring in my sort of training in Aikido, which is a martial art, and teach them all these kind of centering techniques with the weapons. I can do meditation with them. I can introduce them to listening circles. I can basically bring all the things that I've discovered on my journey to be really useful in life and turn it all into one thing. So they're basically getting the toolkit they need to live in a world which is completely unpredictable, and who knows what's coming. But if I can give them, you know, this broad kind of base of skills to deal with the world, then surely that's a good thing. You know, we can sing, we can drum, we can write poetry, we can do art, we can just hang out and have a great time, we can climb trees, we can build dens. So that's where I'm at right now.
mindful of time, so I'll just keep it brief. So as you can see, I'm not from the western side of the universe, of the planet. I'm from Indonesia, and what I would like to talk about the story of self is really the story of we, because my life started as we. My father, my mother, and my whole family. We're a very tight-knit, loving family. My cousins are like my brothers and sisters. They've lived with us like a community. Sometimes my aunt and uncle live with us for a year, 6 months. So my story of self is story of my family, and we're very spiritual in terms of our faith, but also our belief that we are greater than ourselves, in timeline also, past, present, and future. So very much rooted, how I grew up was very much rooted in the idea that we come to this world not to consume it, but to be caretakers. And we are actually one with the universe and one with people, whatever color, whatever religion. Our Indonesian motto is translated into united in diversity, because we're very diverse. We are 13,000 islands with, 4,000, 5,000 languages, not dialects, languages with different cultures. And so we've learned over many centuries to work together with different faith, animism to Buddhism to Muslims. So that is also in my family. And even though I have lived apart from them since I was 3, we are very, very tight-knit. So if one of us dies, we all pull in together with money, support, assistance. We celebrate deaths as well as marriages, everything. So our family is very much our core. So that has led my life in terms of how I see the world. Is about connection and about greater than ourselves. And so what that brings me is about the challenge of also how do we unite in all our diversity and respecting everyone's voices. As for myself, I grew up since I was 3 in 3 different continents at least. In every year, 2 years, we moved countries. So roots for me was not the country, was the people I associated with and in myself. So I had to learn self-development and social development at the same time at a very young age, all the way up to where I am now. So I was constantly changing. But that was my dilemma. My challenge was, because I was so used to change, how do I get comfortable with people who weren't comfortable with change and actually appreciate that, and also understand this whole dichotomy between ego and social? Because I saw both worlds, the Western and the Asian world, as well as the different social classes, because my father came from nothing. His village was in a remote place in the mountains next to a huge river with no running water, no electricity. So we would bathe in the river. And I was dragged all the way there every year. So I had this experience. So that shaped my life. And the story of me and we has always been together. I don't see the difference. I grew up in different cultures, different situations, and at the heart of everything, it was always about the connection at a human level. And often I forget because of my ego, and I noticed that as I grew up, and I often get off guard. So my journey now is all about how can we all get together to understand that change is needed, because regardless of what we want to do or not, it will change. Change will make us change. We can be proactive or we can be reactive. at the same time, how do we unite and respect our diverse cultures and be more caretakers of this world? And I'm very similar to Tim, because my greatest peace is actually being in the mountains and by lots of landscape and nature. I just feel so at one when I'm out there, and I also feel the same need when I'm with people. But I just feel real sadness when there's this disconnect with myself as well as with the people around me. So that's what I am urgently looking at, is about how do we get personal transformation and social transformation in the journey that we all go forward, because there's only one planet. And I'm really mindful of the climate change issue because I love nature, and nature for me is just one. I'm part of that. It's in my DNA. Thank you.
Well, I can let it go or whatever. I think I'm the only one who hasn't said anything.
I think we have Sam and Sophie too, but
Sam, yeah, right.
But go ahead.
Well, a very early memory I have is a nightmare I had probably about 4 years old. And I dreamed that I was being pulled out of myself, out of my head, physically. And then there were some people around. And I remember, and the image of them or the feel of them was similar to what I've seen in some children's art and maybe visionary artists or something like that. It's kind of an almost cartoonish. And it's pretty, I don't remember it that well, but that was the gist of it. And it was pretty, to me at that time anyway, it was a nightmare. And I thought about it later, and I guess I just suspect it's a memory of being born. So I was pulled out of myself, and which at that time was, I guess for me, would be me and my mother, except that there was probably no sense of separation, I guess. So that's an early memory, and the dream itself might be of an even earlier memory. When I was maybe 5 years old, I was sitting on a window ledge in the farmhouse where we lived, and looking out through this, sitting on the window ledge, looking out through a big window at the landscape, and it was sunlit, and I just knew that there was something more to it, and I could not help but want to experience what that is. I was looking at everything. It was a wonderful, beautiful experience, and yet there's something more. There's more to it, and I'm still doing that. Another early memory at the farmhouse was a rainy day where I was bored, and maybe my first real experience of really being bored. And so my mom just got out the supplies, paper and scissors and crayons and everything, and she started showing me how to, well, I would say to show me how to use art well, I can't put into words, but I think you already know what I mean. You can see what she did. And so I carry that with me too. So art is not only visual art, but all kinds of arts. So that's something I've still got. I remember all around the same time, roughly the same few years. My mom put my hand on her tummy to feel my sister in there. So that's another memory. And then my sister was born. And since we lived out in the country, we did not see a lot of people. So the family unit was the family. I got a strong emotion about nature from my dad. I mean, perhaps I just felt it anyway, but he voiced it at some point. And I certainly had already experienced a lot of, country and outdoor kinds of experiences with him and other people. And at some point, I don't remember his exact words, but he just told me how much he loved nature. And he said, you'll see what I mean. And he was right. I did see what he meant. I've been involved in music. There was, again, harking back still to that original period, there was a piano in the house. So I fooled around on that, and that got me started on music. Partly through music and some other stuff. I've met all types and classes of people, and so-called nationalities and races. And so I'm not sure if it's easy for me, but maybe I could say it is easy for me, I guess, to communicate with any kind of person. I'm willing to listen to anyone. And a couple of, and the two memories I have are a meeting with, I was in the green room at a television production, the Dick Cavett Show in New York. And somehow I ended up there alone with W.H. Auden, who I knew was some kind of sort of a famous guy. And I didn't know much about him at that time, but he was just a wonderful guy. And of course, now I realize he was just like a preeminent poet and writer of the 20th century. And we were just sitting there having hors d'oeuvres, and he was just a wonderful man, very kind. And so he had this quality. In a way, it's the same thing as I was saying. I mean, I feel like he could talk to anybody or listen to anybody. There was just no difference between us. He didn't hold himself up at all. And then one other memory I have is of a guitar student of mine in a performance we did of all the students. And it's just a moment in time that I remember. He was singing Purple Haze, and I was playing bass for him. And I think his brother was accompanying him on guitar. And there were, 30 or 40 family and friends there. And the spotlight was on Rudy. And I watched him playing bass. And we had to work on all this for weeks or months ahead of time. And it was just an awesome experience seeing him perform like that. And along the lines of teaching guitar, about 10 years ago then, which was pretty much around that same period, I was involved in an immersive, collaborative, an active learning experiment with a student. And to make a long story very short, I think I realized maybe a year later that we had experienced a self-organizing network of two, which is the minimum. And but I understood what that meant, and that's what set me on the trajectory that I'm on now. And so I'm continuing to experience that, and that's where I am now. Thank you.
Sam, do you want to give it a shot?
I feel like I've been given a very generous forum already. Tammy had me on a session about a whole hour on Sunday. So I'm very willing for Sophie to do this. But if not, I can step in and just tell a few stories. See, on Sunday, Tammy was able to ask me what it is that I do and would like to do and how I kind of got there. And I thought for you guys to really get to know me a little bit better, I'll tell you about some of the influences that have been subconscious, some of the fears, some of the things I'm ashamed of, because those are just as powerful, if not more powerful, than what I really want to do in life. I remember my dad coming to the United States when I was about 2 or 3 years old. So I lived with my mom and my brother and my grandparents away from my dad for about 2 or 3 years, up until I was almost about 5. He came to the United States to get a PhD. We were on Taiwan. And when we finally got off the plane, I didn't know who this person was that I was meeting. And I remember, and feeling very ashamed about it now, asking my mom in Taiwanese, how do you say in English, I hate you? And so when I saw my dad, that was the first thing I said to him. And I haven't really apologized for that since. There was another case in first grade. There was a local television station coming to film the first grade class. And I was attending first grade, and I didn't even know English. I was thrown into this class with about 20 or 30 other kids. But there was such a family pressure to be smart, to be noticeable, to be accomplished, that when the teacher asked a question about a particular thing regarding a map, where the location of something was, I raised my hand saying, okay, I want to be the center of attention, but I didn't really even know the answer to the question. And so I looked stupid, and I, was embarrassed, and my family was embarrassed, and I've not ever lived that one down either. My dad is the oldest son, and I am the oldest son. And in Asian cultures, there's a huge pressure on oldest sons to carry on the family tradition, or to be the smartest one, or to be the richest one, that sort of thing. And it's particularly tough because my grandfather was very, very accomplished. He was a doctor, way back. He was born in 1895. He built a hospital in Taiwan. He helped the community a lot. And my dad was the rebellious one. You know, my grandfather had 11 kids, 7 sons, 4 daughters. And of the 7 sons, my dad rebelled. He was the only one that also did not turn into an MD. All the other 6 uncles I have are all medical doctors of some sort. So he rebelled. He became a mathematician. Went very, very isolated. You know, his theme in life was to really see the abstract beauty in the universe. And now I really appreciate that, because he is one of the people who lives life most in accordance with his values and his principles. You know, because he was a mathematician, because he could think systemically, because he could think about boundary conditions, he could see that the universe, the world, was a finite resource, and he was living green ever since he was able to become conscious, way before other people saw that, hey, we need to live more simply, more austerely, you know, and recycle things and, you know, not become consumers, etc. You know, blatantly, grossly consumerism. So that's been a huge influence on my life. I don't want to tell too many stories. I'll just tell one other story about another thing that I'm kind of ashamed of, and that is, you know, being in an Asian family. We're supposed to be smart. We're supposed to, you know, be able to do all kinds of things. And so, of course, my family wanted me to learn the violin. So I played violin since I was about 9 years old. I kind of got a late start in it. But I was, you know, halfway decent. And so when I got to be about in 10th grade, which was, I guess, the second year of high school, I was auditioning for an all-state orchestra. And these are blind auditions. You know, the judges sit with their backs towards the performers, and people come up to a stand and you play these pre-selected passages. And I was doing kind of well. You know, I was, there were about 20 other violinists in there, and, you know, we were all told, hey, number 3, come up here and play this passage. Number 5, come up to play that passage. And pretty soon it was pretty apparent that it was either down to me and this other girl who were going to be kind of like selected to sit first chair. And I got so nervous and I got so fearful that I just intentionally bombed my very next passage up at the stand. And I never lived that one down either. So I ended up sitting second chair. And my whole family said, hey, you know, you're better than, it's just a lot of embarrassment and shame and things that I'm still trying to get over. I'm still trying to learn why I do those things and why some of those things are probably still at work the way I'm living my life today. So anyway, there's a lot of other stories I could tell, but Tammy was so gracious to give me a chance to tell my story on Sunday in a very different way that I just thought I'd approach it just to share a few other things I have hardly ever shared with anyone else ever in my life. Over.
Sophie, are you there? Do you want to tell a story if you are? Not sure if you are. Otherwise, we're way over time, but that doesn't really matter. And some people have left, some people need to leave. But let's just maybe then take a few minutes to wrap up. We usually end with sort of a meta discussion about how this went as an experiment, sort of look at what happened, how did we get over that. So let's just take a few minutes to maybe talk about this whole session.
I thought it was great. It was wonderful to hear more about people and land in the space together. And I just feel like, you know, I just feeling in my heart the connection with each person's story and what they're working with. And there's a beautiful kind of dimensionality to doing this kind of sharing. So I really appreciate it. And I have to jump away. So I thought I'd jump in at the beginning.
I find it also very nice. I'm attracted to stories, people's stories, which are sort of the same and so different at the same time. And I do think if we could do that with all people who we are sort of a little bit even like this, if we could do that, there would be no war nowhere.
Yeah, I'm feeling exactly that kind of feeling. It seems to me that when we open up, when we share what's really going on for us, you know, and make ourselves vulnerable in that way, it really touches everyone deeply. And that is our commonality. We're all human. We all have these things going on, both powerful things, both kind of negative things. And I really feel like if we connect like this, then it just gets around all obstacles, opinion, differences in values, all of that just become irrelevant because we feel our human connection.
I thought it was really wonderful too. I was a little afraid that it would be boring or we would just sort of list our stories one at a time, but it really gives quite a deep sense of each person, which is really nice. And then more by getting these stories, we sort of get more sides of each other that maybe we wouldn't otherwise be able to share. And I think it's both the good and the bad stories that are important. So I'd like to see us maybe go a little bit further with that in another way. But I really liked this session a lot.
I'm signed up for Tim's camp. I'm coming to the woods. I honestly, I had this feeling about everybody's story that that the weave was already present, and this was bringing up to the surface the little, threads of how we could somehow, take it to another level, and I'm very appreciative of this form, but in the way of scaling, I see that weaving story is the way to go. It just is, so natural when you find the overlap of your circles and what's naturally there. So, however I can participate further, I'm ready and able. Thank you.
I'm adding my vote to the story contingent. I shouldn't say contingent because then we're starting to break up into those groups you were talking about, Fleming. But anyway, I'm casting my vote with the story impetus, and in all its forms, including fictional.
Anybody else with some final comments?
I guess I've not been part of the group as long as some of you, but this is definitely a way to get to know different sides that are not necessarily brought forth in our more weekly experiment forums. So I thought this is definitely a way to understand each other better and get sides that don't normally come out in conversation, and to hear the common need for connection and really deep appreciation. And I barely got started. I mean, there's some more stories that I could tell, but I thought I was sharing a little too much already.
I think we all have a few more stories.
I was worried, I guess, sort of like you, Fleming. I think that it would just be, how could we possibly squeeze them all in? I was just thinking it's just impossible. But actually, we kind of did, and it was nice too. And it's nice is not in quotes. It was very nice.
Cool. Okay, well, I think we're going to end off. There'll be, if anybody stays around, there'll be a brief planning session after this for deciding what's next. That's usually how we do it. But otherwise, I would like to thank you all for coming, telling your public stories, and I hope we find a way of continuing that. One way or another, the experiments will continue, so I hope to see all of you another good time. So have a good day, and thank you for coming. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Bye. Bye, Lila.